Hello everyone, it's Jamarl Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, still not in my studio, living the Airbnb life. I hope everyone is doing okay. So it's 1 a.m. here. It's late. I have not necessarily gotten adjusted to this time zone. But that said, I tend to be an insomniac anyway, so it's just weird. Also, I did not realize that Kenya is on high elevation, and I've been short of breath ever since I've been here. Now, when I was in Ecuador, it was that way. It took a few days to get adjusted to it. My wife seems impervious to those. It seems to be just me. But beyond that, it's all good. All right, so I have a few quick stories to go through. One is with Cory Booker, and actually the other one when I get to that one. But I want to talk about Cory Booker and Andrew Gillum. If you remember, Gillum is the mayor, he's the mayor that's running for governor of Florida against DeSantis. Now, the distinguishing thing about him is supposedly he's a lefty. He's a lefty's lefty. When you see his campaign ads, it's these big blockbuster ads of all of the things that he wants to implement in Florida. I have a difference of opinion, I think, with some lefties on Medicare for all within the context of a state. I think this is somewhat of a, I'm not going to say, let's just say it's a difficult thing to pull off, that's all. I'll say it that way. It's a difficult thing to pull off. I'm not gutting anybody's hopes or dreams on that particular point. And if you can pull it off, excellent. I just think it's difficult to pull off. From the standpoint of getting something like that done, it's better to do it on a federal level. Okay, let me explain what I mean by that before I go into the story. The story will be quick anyway. California is going to try to implement Medicare for all at some point. California has some weird rules around education. But beyond having some weird rules around education, California is going to have to raise a certain amount of additional revenue in order to pay for the people that it's going to cover. I'm not against that. I'm a lefty. But the problem is California takes dollars. California doesn't make dollars. California uses dollars. There's a difference in those things. At the end of the day, California has a balance its budget, meaning that it has to figure out some way to use the resources that it has or raise additional resources that it has year after year after year to balance a particular budget dealing with healthcare. Any state that is going to implement it is going to have to do this, including Andrew Gillum. States have to balance their budgets. States use dollars. Now, if you're having this conversation with Andrea Ocasio-Cortez and you ask her, how are you going to pay for this, Alexandria? How are you going to pay for this? Well, at the end of the day, the federal government makes dollars. They're the people who make dollars. For all intents and purposes, we are running the printing presses to pay for these wars. We're $26 trillion in debt. The idea of how do you pay for it is somewhat of a nonsense question if you're talking about it from the federal government's level. Now, it's not a complete nonsense question, but you can knock that out of the park in the same sense of how do we pay for all of these wars? How many people have been killed and maimed and murdered? How much money have we spent on this? You can knock that question out of the park far easier from the standpoint of a federal government as opposed to something of a state. That's all I'm saying. It is far more difficult. The state uses dollars. The federal government makes those dollars. If you're talking about Medicare for all, and if you have let's say a budget shortfall, if it's a situation where you need to raise more revenue, you can print more dollars. It's not a situation of, being crippled by that. CNN, I don't want to go on a tangent. CNN they've been after Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez. God knows they've been after him. And I think they've been after him because it's a meteor, and it's great to do a story about knocking a meteor out of the sky. And so the first time they asked Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez about, well, what did they ask her about? Medicare for all. How do you pay for it? How do you pay for it? How do you pay for it? She knocks it out of the park. It's one of those things where Andrew Cuomo is listening to her knock this question out of the park, and he nods in approving, like, great job. It's amazing. He has a newsman's face, and he's looking at her with his newsman's face that's no expression. He's trying to do his best to do no expression. That's, I think, what he's trying to do. So whatever she answers it, I have a newsman's face that I'm just going to stare in the camera in a particular way, and I'm not going to change my face. Yeah. It seems like he approved of her answer. I approved of her answer. I even did the video. This time, they asked her the question, and they varied the question a bit. So instead of saying, how do you pay for Medicare for all? They were like, here are all the things that you've ever talked about. It costs $40 trillion a year, Alexandria. How do you pay that number for that year? How do you get to that height, that number? How do you do it? How do you do it? How do you pay for it? That's a different question. Like, they're saying, like, as if she is going to get all of that stuff done within the context of one particular time period, and all of it. It's nonsense. And she fluffed it. I'm not going to say she fell apart. She got wordy. And it's something that I will understand, but I don't think the rest of the people who are looking at it will fully understand what she's saying. And yeah, it got wordy. It didn't go well. So I want you to see this. And yes, I'm sorry. I went on massive tangents on that one. And God, we're 6 minutes in and haven't seen the video yet. Take a look at this. So Gillum is with one Cory Booker. Now, I watched this video. And I was like, God, this just seems so fake. And I asked my wife, I said, wife, is it just me? Like, if you were looking at this, would this also seem fake to you? She's like, I don't really care that much about it. And I've rolled it back, and she's like, please don't play that thing again. I was like, well, why does it kill your ear so much? If it's something, she says, yeah, I mean, if I really think about it, yeah, it comes across as a bit fake, but I don't trust these guys anyway. This is difficult for me to listen to, and I have a hard time figuring out why, but I think I know why. Take a look at this.
Hey, it's Cory Booker and Andrew Gillum from the great state of Florida. And listen, I'm a Jersey boy, but I love Florida, and I want to say this is in the name of love. I'm asking everybody out there to support Andrew. I'm all over the country trying to help this midterm, but I'm going to tell you right now, when it comes to priorities, Andrew is at the top of my list because his election will change not just Florida for the better, but will change America. But this is all talk. We got to get some action going, right?
That's right.
What do we need him to do?
We need you to go and visit us at andrewgillum.com. Give a contribution. If you're a Floridian, get registered to vote. We've got to vote like our lives depend on it, because in fact, our lives do depend on who the next governor is of the state of Florida. I'm proud to have this man's support, and with your help, we're going to bring home a win on November 6th.
So there is an urgency here. Please don't even take a moment after you see this video. Please
do it now.
Do it now.
Give it a little effect.
Do it now.
I don't mean to be a dick. Honestly, I don't. I promise you I don't. I'm a tender flower on the inside. But this show commands a certain behavior and a certain way of getting across disdain of something that I'm seeing and experiencing. I hate that video. You can't get, I cannot get across to you how much I dislike that video. Now, I couldn't put my finger on why I disliked the video. God, it seems so phony. It just seems radically, uncomfortably, brutally, unrelentingly, criminally phony. Does Cory Booker really give two shits about Gillum's campaign? How on earth? Like, let me say it this way. Cory Booker is probably going to run for president of the United States. Cory Booker, the guy who didn't want drugs imported from Canada, Cory Booker, that got maimed by a bunch of lefties when Cory Booker killed Bernie Sanders' bill trying to get those prescription drugs into Canada. That same Cory Booker, when he runs for president, he's going to need a certain lefty bona fides, because I think the people realize where the presidency or what the primaries are going to look like with a bunch of people trying to say how lefty they are. I would almost wager that this is going to be in a campaign video. Maybe not the still, but one of these stills with him hanging out with Gillum. In the same way when Bernie Sanders was in that race with on stage with Tom Perez, I said the same thing. Tom Perez is rubbing himself in Bernie Sanders because Bernie Sanders is the thing that's popular in the moment. Well, Gillum has become some degree of a rock star in a similar vein as Ocasio-Cortez. And these guys are doing their best to show how lefty they are. Now, Cory Booker has his arm around him and everything else, and is like, yes, I'm all for this guy. We're going to take this, and this is an important thing to do, and all this other stuff. What happens when the camera goes off? I am fantastically curious about what happens when the camera goes off. Because I don't like this. I don't care about this. I don't give a shit about you guys' bromance. What I care about is you going into a particular thing and working on essentially doing what the people fucking want you to do. That's what I care about. I don't need you to be foaming at the mouth. I don't need you to be angry. I don't know who that video attracts. It turns me off like nobody's business. And like I said, the reasoning for it, I think, has to do with a certain degree of phoniness that's associated with it. Oh, God, man. I hate that video. I hate that video. I really do. And maybe I'm an asshole for doing so. But I massively dislike that video. When the camera's off, they have one big orgy. I don't believe Cory Booker cares about Andrew Gillum only insofar as Cory Booker can use Andrew Gillum to get Cory Booker elected. Right there. Now, some people will say, oh, dude, that's massively cynical. That's massively cynical. You really, yes, I think people left to their own devices function at the lowest common denominator, meaning they go where their incentives push them to go. It may not necessarily be that they always love this aspect of themselves, but I think left to an emotional level, they may find reasons to justify it. Don't get me wrong. Meaning they can't necessarily accept the fact that they're doing something in a particular way, but still inexorably towards a particular path where their incentives push them to be. That's not an absolute, by the way. I don't say it as an absolute. There's some people out there who overcome those particular things based on cultural or their own kind of insensitivities or sensitivities. But left to their own devices, yes, I think that. More so in politics. Cory Booker is using Andrew Gillum for his leftiness. Andrew Gillum is having his progressiveness hoard out to Cory Booker in this ad. This ad just comes across to me as massively fake. Gillum is trying to pass Medicare for all in his state. Cory Booker was trying to block drugs from coming into Canada because people were paying so much for drug prices. Yes, later on he went back with a bill with Bernie Sanders, and he did the exact same thing he's doing here, trying to rub some leftiness off on himself in order to make himself look a little bit more to the left. To the left. Not going to keep this video long. I'm just saying, I did not like this video. That's all. That's all. Booker might as well flip off the camera that with blatant disingenuous. That's it. Maybe that's it. I don't want the disingenuous. That's what it is. I just want somebody who's just a person. Be a fucking person. Now, and let me put that in context. I think what I'm saying is there's something to be said for authenticity. That's what I think. And authenticity with, there's something to be said for authenticity. That's all. And it just comes across, it's a certain practiced phoniness. It's like, dude, you need to work on your authenticity a little bit more. But it's what it is. I don't know much about Gillum's campaign, so I can't really comment on Gillum. It just seems like he has a bunch of stuff that he's checked off in a box that he wants to implement. I like all those things, so I'm not against necessarily those things. I can't say anything about Gillum. Booker? Cory fucking Booker? Yeah, it says Cory Booker. All right, I'm going to end this here. Yeah, I don't like practice phoniness. That's all. Give me authenticity any day of the week. And by the way, authenticity. Look, here's the thing. When I started this video, I said, I was talking to my wife. I was like, how do I name this video? Because this video is a little weird to name. And she's like, Andrew Gillum whoring out his progressiveness to Cory Booker. And she's like, nah. I was like, no, that's it. That's it. That's exactly what it is. Yes, I'm using that particular thing. And I said, this is kind of brutal though, right? I mean, this is not like, if I wanted to have a conversation with Andrew Gillum anytime in life, is this the title that you write? Or if I wanted to have Cory Booker on my show at any time, is this the title that you write? Do those people dislike you after you've said that one was whoring out some esoteric aspect of his ideology to another person? And it's not even the real ideology. It's the look that you're giving off something to the person just by being in close proximity to the other person. There's nothing given off. Just because you're standing beside the person doesn't necessarily mean there's anything given off on that other person. People have this weird way of inherently believing that tribes, different tribes, can't necessarily coexist. And if they're coexisting, something of one rubs off on the other. People do things for their benefit. I strongly suggest that Cory Booker is doing the same here. Let's look at the tweet, because the tweet is goddamn special. Right here. Shout out to Cory Booker for showing some love. It's time to bring it home, y'all. It's time to bring it home, y'all. Cory Booker is showing you some love, you dude. He is. He is. Because he wants to get that aspect of you that people think is leftiest. I don't know if that's a word. I'm making that shit up and I'm going with it. And yeah, he wants to get that leftiest thing. It's not because he loves you. I suspect Gillum knows that. But it doesn't really matter if Gillum knows it. He plays into the role that he's supposed to play into because people expect him to play into the role that he's playing. It's a certain political force it's weird. I don't know where it's imposed. It's almost like there's a certain behavior that's expected of people and they follow the expected behavior. It's always weird to me, but why is it expected behavior? I guess if you do something that breaks that role, you're going to piss off Cory Booker, you're going to piss off people in a way you look bad about it. I guess it all boils down to not looking bad. There's a certain political will. All right, I'm going to end this. All right, guys, I have another one after this, relatively quick. And I'll see you guys shortly. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through Patreon. Thanks, guys.